It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
Welcome to the show. This is Phil Ferguson, and of course, you are listening to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. Thank you for joining us. We have a lot to cover today. Later on, we're going to have a discussion with Ray Smock, who was the official historian for the House of Representatives of the United States government for almost 2 decades, I think. And then he's been a long-term historian involved in history of politics specifically, and knows quite a bit about Constitution and how that works. And we're going to talk about the government shutdown, and we're going to talk about Trump, and we're going to talk about other things related to that. So hang on, and you're going to enjoy that. Also, in the Investing Skeptically segment, it wasn't planned, but I'm going to have Annuity Rant Part 2, because someone sent me a letter saying they work for an annuity company that has really good annuities. So you'll learn about that in that segment. The other thing we have going on, I've mentioned it before, and I'm going to keep mentioning it, at least for the next couple of months. I am in the middle of, you and the listeners and I are doing a fundraiser for American atheists. And this fundraiser is to provide hotel rooms for the American Atheist Conference coming up Easter of 2019. And the way I'm going to do that is any money that the show generates through the Patreon account. So that's patreon.com/Phil. You can go there and donate $1 per show. You can donate more than $1 per show, but that's up to you. I'm going to try very, very hard to get the show out earlier, a whole day earlier for Patreon patrons, I guess is the right word to say, than just regular listeners who get the show for free. So that's an extra perk for patrons. But any money that is raised in January, February, and March, all of it, I said that I would double up to $5,000. So if you guys donated collectively as an audience $5,000, I will match that and double the $5,000. It becomes $10,000 to create travel grants for students going to the American Atheist 2019 conference. So since then, one of my listeners who liked this idea so much said that they want to play along too. So what they have done is they have committed up to $5,000, no more, to match your money as well. So if all the listeners donate $5,000, this person will add $5,000, and I will add $5,000 because my cap on this promotion is $5,000. So we have the potential of raising $15,000. Now, if we don't make the $5,000 goal, his match becomes even more important. So, for example, if all of the listeners in January, February, and March go to patreon.com/Phil, and the total donations is $2,000, he will match the $2,000, it becomes $4,000, and then I'll match the $4,000, and it becomes $8,000. So whatever you donate will get magnified up to 4 times. So again, if $2,000 is donated, this anonymous listener will match that $2,000. It becomes $4,000, and because we haven't reached my cap of $5,000, I will match that with my own $4,000, and it could become a total of $8,000. So your contribution is not doubled, it is maybe tripled. And if we don't get close to the maxes, it might be magnified by 4 times. So again, you can go do that, and we will take that money and send it over to American Atheists just so they can start planning and giving grants away. I have sent some money already to American Atheists so that they don't have to wait until after April to start giving away grants for students that are coming 3 weeks later. So I've already sent them some money. I've made a guess at how much you guys are going to contribute and doubled it already. But the more you give, the more I'm on the hook for. So a little bit about that. And I think that's going to wrap up the beginning segment. We'll take a little interlude and go into investing skeptically, and then, of course, our interview. Today's Investing Skeptically segment is Annuity Rant number 2. I had actually planned to do something different today, but I received an email, and I do want to say it was a very nice email. And so before I get all worked up, I want to apologize to the person that sent me the email because they sent a very, very sweet, very nice email that basically said, I work for an annuity company and the stuff that we sell isn't like the stuff that you just had in your last show. Now, the problem that this person can't know is that I have heard this claim so many times that I've lost count. I've heard it from salespeople. I've heard it from people that work for annuity companies that do IT or help design them. And everyone wants to think that the company they work for is not fucking the public. And I get that. So I appreciate the intent of the message, and I appreciate that you want to think that you work for a good, solid company that's helping people. Oh, just a caveat here for anyone. If you send me an email, I may talk about you on the show. I am not going to use your name. If you listen, almost every real-life example, I don't use people's names. And in the past, I've even had a few people come on and we've hidden their name or changed their name, and they've confirmed that they are actually the person that got screwed in a bad investment. Not going to have anybody on with me this time, but again, my apologies to the emailer whose name will be unnamed, and I will do everything I can, and I may even have to go back and edit out if I slip up. I'm not going to mention the name of the company either, because it is specific to where they work, so we don't want to do that. But I told them that I've heard this kind of claim before, and they really, really wanted me to look at one of the annuities their company sells. So they sent me a link. And I just spent an hour reading the brochure. Now, the brochure that you get is not the contract. The contract may be over 100 pages and includes way more details, caveats, and what ifs that you may never think about that are in the brochure. I am only going to comment on stuff inside of the brochure. I'm going to limit myself to that. So if you kind of enjoyed or wanted more Annuity Rant from last week, I think you're going to enjoy. So sit back and strap in, because we're going to have some fun as I go over this document for you, dear listener. And I'm going to give you, the first page is just a title page, nothing on there. The second thing is on page 2, it has a disclosure saying, by the way, this doesn't really count. You have to read the contract and sign the last page that you acknowledge that you read the contract. I just talked about that. You're probably going to get the contract because they have to give it to you by law, and you're probably not going to read it. And you're going to sign the last page saying that you read it. And once you do that, you really can't complain about how you get treated because you agreed to everything. All right, fine. The next thing it has, and I'm going to read this quote, the minimum guaranteed surrender value is 87.5% of your premium. Wait, what? One more time? So if you invest $100,000 and you don't change your mind in a few days, and then you want your money out, they're going to guarantee that you're going to get 87.5% of your money back. Oh, shit. Well, that's hardcore. Okay. Then they also give you a minimum guaranteed rate of return every year that will never be less than 1%. The funny thing is that 1% is on the 87.5% value. So even after 10 years, you could still be behind. But we'll get more into that a little later on. On page 3, it says that you will get a monthly point-to-point return with a cap. In case you didn't know it or you've missed it from previous shows, as soon as you see the phrase point-to-point, other companies will use a different phrase. But something like that, and this is very, very common in annuities, point-to-point. So if you just like Google S&P 500 returns and you pull up a graph and it shows you the returns, it will show you the price change of the S&P 500. That does not include the dividends that are paid out that you may have reinvested. So if you look at Wikipedia S&P 500 page, it will show you the price change and it will show you the total return, including dividends. Currently, the annual dividend in the S&P 500 is around 2.2%. However, in the past, and maybe again in the future, I don't know, I don't see it going up too much, but in the past, it's been 3, 4, 5% and even higher in some years. All of that is kept and pocketed by the insurance company. You get 0% of the dividends. You only get the point to point with a cap. And so this had, I found out as I read later, a 1% monthly cap. So if the market makes 8% in 1 month, you get 1. You get 1 point. Now, my question that I put in the email was, is there a cap on the downside? So if the market goes up 8% in 1 month, you get 1 point. If it goes 8% down the next month, do you only lose 1 point or do you lose 8? Hang on. We'll find out. Next we have is page 2 continued. There's a graph. And my initial response was, ugh, because I've seen these graphs so many times. And they always start a year or 2 or 3 before a big market crash. And this one is no different. It starts in calendar year 2005, right before the big drop in '08. Why did they not start in 2009? Why did they not start in 2001 after the dot-com crash? Because for a long time, annuity charts would start in 99 or 2000, right before the dot-com bubble burst. So they want to show you a couple good years, and then they want to show you the big scary drop. And then they want to show you good years. And after a 10-year time period, in this case, it's 9-year time period, they want to show that the annuity didn't do so bad compared to the S&P 500. And by the way, their graph has the point-to-point return, not the total return. So on this graph, it shows a hypothetical person investing $100,000 on January 1st of 2005, and then shows how much money they would have on January 1st, 2015. If I'm doing that right, that's 9 years. The worst that you can do, the absolute worst case scenario, they guarantee you that you could lose money. That's right. The guaranteed minimum value after 10 years is slightly below $100,000 on this graph. The graph is crude enough that I don't know the actual numbers at the end. But it shows starting at 87,000 and slowly going up 1% a year as the minimum, absolute minimum guarantee. Well, you can figure out that if you're down 12.5% and you only make 1% a year, you're not going to get back to parity in 9 years. I'm going to call that $98,000. So you could invest $100,000. 9 years later, you could have $97,000 or $98,000. That's the worst case scenario. That's a pretty shitty scenario for 9 years of investing in, and I have my radio quotes up, the market. But there it is. That's something that could happen. Then they show what you probably would have made if you had invested in this 9 years ago. And you can see that this graph never has a return in any given year higher than 3%. There's a couple years where you make zero, like 2008. There's a couple years where you make something between 0 and 3. And then there's a whole bunch of years where you make 3%. So apparently there's some other rule somewhere that you'll never make more than 3%. After 9 years, the $100,000 turned into $126,000. All right, you made 26 grand. And if you don't know anything else about investing or how the stock markets work, you might think that that's okay. The graph also did show the point-to-point returns, and that line went up to $170,000. So when you look at it and the way it's kind of geared and it's kind of angled and squinted the right way, 170,000 doesn't look like a whole lot much more than 126. But I look at that and go, whoa, that's what, $44,000. However, if you had invested in the S&P 500, you wouldn't get the point-to-point return. You get the point-to-point return plus the dividends. And that works out to $209,000. So you could invest $100,000, and this includes the single biggest one-year drop in a couple of generations, 2008, 37% loss. You could invest $100,000, 9 years later have $209,000. So do you want to make $26,000 or do you want to make $109,000? So when I say the insurance company makes more with your money than you do, this is a wonderful case. I'm not saying they put it all in the stock market, but they're probably going to make way more than the $26,000 you're going to make investing in this product. I don't like products. So we go on. Page 4. The vested account value less any applicable surrender charges, market value adjustments, and rider charges. So this is in reference to if you want to take the money out. So if you want to take money out, first of all, it starts with a base of 87.5, and then you may have to pay a surrender charge, and you may have to pay other rider charges on top of the one. I mean, you make 1 or 3%, 1, 2, or 3% per year guaranteed, minimum of 1. But you're going to have to pay all these penalties if you want to take your money out. And let's see what he goes. During the surrender charge period, withdrawals that exceed the annual. So you do get to take out 10% per year if you choose to, but not the first year, without paying the surrender penalty. Surrender charges and MVA applies for the first 10 years. The surrender fee is up to 10% penalty. So if you take out more than the 10% that's allowed, your penalty will be 10% of the money you take out. And if you own this all the way until the end of the contract or until you want to annuitize it, and annuitization means that you have stopped adding money and you start getting annuity payments. And it clearly says an annuity option may be changed anytime before annuity payments begin, which means once annuity payments begin, you may not make changes. So you're stuck. So if you start taking out too little money, you're going to get too little money for as long as it pays out. If you take out too much money, you're going to get stuck taking out too much money for as long as it pays out. I don't like that. I really don't like that flexibility. So even if it did work, even if it did make money, that becomes another problem. Page 5, like I said, the surrender value is up to 10% penalty. So if you take out more than the amount that's allowed per year, which is 10%, you could pay 10% withdrawal fee. You can pay penalties on the supplemental charges, and then you may have to pay tax on it. And so this is an absolutely amazing thing. Let me get to that point here. Hang on one second. Yes, here it is. What is it here? If you take out payments or make withdrawals, you pay ordinary income on the interest on the amount earned. So if you put in 100,000, and let's say it goes up to 110, and ignoring the 87.5% payback and ignoring the 10% penalty, if you put in 100,000 and take out 10,000, you have to pay your ordinary tax rate, which can be 34% right now. I mean, it's been recently 39%. Way long ago, it was 70%, and the 70% number has been proposed again. Withdrawals are treated as coming from earnings first and then returns of your premium payment. So in that scenario, if you made 100,000 and it went to 110, you check out the 10,000. The first thing that you get back is your earnings. So you could pay 30, 40% on that $10,000. So if you pay 30%, you take out 10, you only get 7. Nice trick. Another one, you may pay a federal income tax penalty on earnings you withdraw before the age of 59 and a half. I think that should say you will pay. Now, maybe I'm missing something here with the tax code, but you could put the money in, $100,000, and it turns into $87,500 overnight. You change your mind, you want to take it out. You pay 10% penalty on all of it, so $8,000. If you made any money, the money, you have to pay ordinary income tax rates on it, and you have to pay 10% penalty on all of that on top of it. It just never stops getting worse. And then it says here, if your annuity is issued in connection with a tax qualified plan, you may be required to take out the minimum distributions at 70 and a half. And this goes to, I think I talked about this last episode. You can buy an annuity inside of an IRA. You don't buy an IRA and then put money, or you don't buy an annuity and then put IRA money in it. So because it is inside of an IRA, you will be required to take out money at 70 and a half. They said you may be required. Okay, fine. Legally, it's not wrong, but it should say you will be required. The law may change between now and then, but based on the current law, as I understand it, you will be required. Then it has a note here. Buying an annuity within an IRA doesn't give you any extra tax benefit. It's in the brochure. I love it. The annuity is tax deferred, which means you generally don't pay taxes on the money until it is paid to you. Payments under an annuity payment plan are generally entirely taxable under most IRA plans. So if there was any benefit to an annuity, it would be this ability to defer taxes like you could in an IRA. Inside of an annuity, your growth is tax deferred. Now, this annuity, you're going to make worst case 1%, best case 3%. That's tax deferred. Well, yip-de-fucking-kaye, I can go get municipal bonds and make that kind of rate of return tax deferred, and I can take out and put in money whenever I want. It's staggering. So, but if it's inside of an IRA, all of the growth, all of the money you take out is going to be tax deferred, and the tax is going to be due on the entire amount. So it's just absolutely staggering. And then you say, well, what about a taxable account? If you have a taxable account, if you're investing in index funds, stock index funds, the vast majority of your return will compound year after year after year. You will pay taxes on the dividends, but as we discussed just moments ago, current dividends rate is 2.2%. So you only pay tax on that. The rest of it is appreciation. If you don't thrash around in your account, buy and hold, you won't pay any tax. You won't pay any tax year after year after year, and it appreciates. Only when you sell it, and then that amount will be capital gains. If you're in low income, the capital gains tax rate is 0. I shit you not, 0. Most listeners, it's going to be 15%. If you make a ton of money, it's going to be 20%. But if you make a ton of money and you're paying 20% capital gains, your ordinary income tax is probably 34% or higher. Page 7. We may change your annuity contract from time to time. They allow themselves to do whatever they have to do to change the contract. You have no control. And it goes through explaining that they may pay the agent, the broker, the firm selling it to you. It's not deducted from your premium, technically. You do get to keep 87.5% of your money. However, and I'm going to quote here, The compensation we pay impacts contract pricing, including surrender charges, interest rates, caps, participation rate, and spread. I didn't even go into the interest rate, rate participation and the spread. Another one here. I got the company name. I got to make sure I don't read it. Your annuity values are guaranteed by XYZ Life Insurance Company. XYZ Life Insurance Company is required to maintain only the value of your surrender value. And so my question here was, if they have financial trouble, can you lose some of your money? At the very, very bottom of the footnotes, at 34 pages or 37 pages, it does have a little disclaimer saying, payments of monies owed is dependent on the ability of XYZ Insurance Company to make said payments. A lot of people don't know this. When you buy life insurance or annuities of any kind, you may not get 100% of what you expect, even in this mediocre to shitty investment. You may not even get all of that back if the company cannot pay their bills. That is why people look for life insurance. At term life insurance, it doesn't matter so much because you pay for a year, you get a year of coverage, just like your car insurance. But if you get whole or universal, variable universal, some other complicated thing like that, the companies are rated A, B, AA, AAA. And the reason that's so important is because you want to make sure that your insurance company doesn't go bankrupt and screw you at the end. You invest this money and you wait for 30 years, you get underperformance for all that time, and then they go bankrupt. Now, you'll probably get some. You might even get most of the money, but you need to understand that's an additional risk that a lot of people don't know. Another quote here, interest rates are subject to change at the insurer's discretion. Okay. So that basically covers it. I mean, there's more stuff that I had. And again, to the wonderful listener that sent this, my apologies. I hope you didn't expect that I wouldn't talk about it, but there it is. So the short of it is, you could invest in the market. At least you think you are investing in the stock market because it says it's indexed to the S&P 500. You don't get any of the dividends. You almost never do. Your money, $100,000 turns into $87,500, worst case scenario right away. At the end of 9 years, you could have less than you started with, even with a wonderful run of the last 9 years. Ideally, they're projecting that your $100,000 turns into $126,000. The stock market point to point turns into $170,000. And if you include the dividends, you gotta include the dividends. You could make $209,000. So the net difference is you could make $26,000 or you could make $109,000, kind of sort of investing in the stock market or actually investing in the stock market. And by the way, when it comes to death benefit, this is another hysterical thing. If you invest in index funds and it grows from $100,000 to $209,000 and you die, whoever you give that to gets what's called a step up in cost basis. They pay zero tax. Zero. When the annuity pays out, I think they pay tax. You might have to check with a CPA on that, but it can't get better than zero. If your $100,000 turns into $209,000 and it's inside of an IRA, when the person you give the money to starts taking money out, they will have to pay taxes. However, if it is a non-spousal IRA, it's a beneficiary IRA where it goes maybe to one of your kids or a niece or somebody like that, they can take money out of that IRA based on their life expectancy, which may be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And they only pay tax on the part that they take out, and the rest of it continues to grow tax deferred for a very, very long time. So every way I freaking slice this, annuities, bad. That's all. Annuity bad. Annuity bad unless it is a 403B, which is also called a TSA or a tax sheltered annuity. The word annuity means something totally different there. Don't panic. Or if you're leaving a company and they offer you a lump sum cash distribution or an annuity, again, a totally different thing. And it may not be bad. It might be bad, but it may not be bad. There's a good chance there that's going to be okay. But if you go to see an agent of some kind and you buy an annuity, I don't really care if it's fixed, variable, indexed, fixed variable, fixed indexed. And there's a possibility that there's one out there that's good. Hey, it could happen. It's not necessarily inherently bad. It just always seems to be that way. So that ends Annuity Rant number 2.
We do not accept that there is a God or gods, personal or in nature, manifesting himself, herself, itself, or themselves in any way. We do not accept the idea of heaven, hell, perdition, purgatory, or any other of the stages reached by escalator going either up or down. We do not accept that there is any life after death. We do not accept miracles. We do not accept the idea of angels, spooks, goblins, gremlins, leprechauns, elves, or souls. We simply do not accept that anyone at any time was ever a prophet of God who did not exist or which did not exist. We do not accept any so-called holy books as guides to life, and that includes the Bible, the Torah, the Veda, the Koran, the Upanishads, the Awaspi, they invent them constantly. We don't care whether that book was written by anyone in history, in any age in history, whether that was written by Moses, Mary Baker Eddy, Paul, Joseph Smith, Mohammed, Gautama Buddha, or the fickle finger of fate.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investment should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship. All right, everybody, welcome back. Of course, you are still listening to the cleverly titled Phil Ferguson Show, and with me I have, again, a previous guest, Ray Smock. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Phil.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. You enjoying your winter?
Well, we're 75 miles outside of Washington, D.C. Everybody's snowed in, but the roads are empty because nobody's going to work.
Yeah, that's nice. No traffic in the D.C. area. That's not what we would normally expect.
That's the only good thing about a shutdown that you could say. Everything else is bad.
Well, I do know that you were on the show almost a full year ago, and since we have many new listeners, if you wouldn't mind kind of giving us a little bit about your background and why you know so much about the topics we're going to cover today.
I'm a historian by training. I'm the first official historian of the U.S. House of Representatives. I served with 3 speakers of the House of Representatives back in the 1980s and 1990s. A scholar of the Congress and the presidency for a long time, going back more than a half a century. I just retired from a long directorship at the Robert C. Byrd Center for Congressional History and Education at Shepherd University in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Now I'm a retired guy, but I haven't given up my keen interest in Congress and all things related to the federal government. And of course, when I was on with you a year ago, I had just written a book called Trump Tsunami, which was a diary of the Trump campaign in his first year in office. I've been following Trump very closely because I still can't figure it out. I still can't believe that this particular character was elected president of the United States. And so I decided to follow it very closely and keep a diary of all the events. And now I'm ready to publish another book in February. It's being designed right now. These are self-published books that are on Amazon. I want it to be my own voice, and I don't want to have footnotes and all the other stuff that you need to do when you publish academically. So I'm having fun publishing these things myself, and then going around and doing book talks and locally, and occasionally it gets mentioned on places like C-SPAN or the History News Network, things like that. So I'm just having a good time, as much as you could have a good time following Donald Trump.
Since we got to the topic of the new book, what's the title of that one going to be?
The new book is called American Demagogue, Critical Essays on the Trump Presidency. Sounds
like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of follow breaking news, and there's lots of it with Donald Trump, but also then to take my experience as a historian, as someone who's worked in government and who's studied government and who follows the Constitution, and try to add a sort of an analytical framework that doesn't just criticize Trump for being the most unqualified person ever to hold the office and all the other kinds of things that you can say about him. I'm less inclined to do that now in my second book, although I certainly do it, but I'm more inclined to put it in an analytical framework to try to see where this is going and how we might deal with it.
Sure. Do you have any knowledge of any former president ever meeting with world leaders in private? All right, listeners, we had a little technical difficulty, so I had to call Ray a different way, so you'll probably notice his voice sounds a little bit different, but we're going to kind of jump right back in where we were. And last we were talking, it was about Trump, of course, and I was asking you if any other president, to your knowledge, has ever had kind of secret one-on-one meetings with any world leaders without anyone else there to take notes or to participate in what happened.
Well, we do know that presidents, including President Roosevelt during World War II, went to great lengths to go to secret meetings. But at those secret meetings, once they got there were plenty of other people and staff there. I don't think any president has done what Donald Trump has done, and that is to meet with, on 4 or 5 different occasions now, for sometimes up to 2 hours at a stretch, with Vladimir Putin, with no notes from that meeting that anybody seems to have. He has confiscated even the translator's notes, which oftentimes aren't what goes on in the conversation. They're just simply little notes that they make when they're trying to figure out what's being said. But that is a violation of federal law. And someone needs to call them on it. Sooner or later, I'm sure they will. But after the Nixon debacle of the Watergate in the 70s, Congress passed a new law called the Presidential Records Act. And the Presidential Records Act requires that presidents keep detailed, accurate records of everyone they meet, logs and transcripts of meetings and notes that need to be preserved. If other people are in the room at a high level, they're supposed to make sure that material is preserved as part of the president's papers, which are eventually, after his term of office, transferred to the National Archives of the United States, and then they become part of the presidential library system. It is law that you are required to keep certain kinds of records, and certainly a record with a head of state, especially someone like our adversary in Russia, those records would be required.
Wow. So I did not even know. I've never heard that on any news network that that is another law that he's in violation of. So probably a lot of my listeners just heard that from you first, that is another thing that he's not doing correctly.
Well, I've been following the National Archives and the presidential libraries for a long time, and I think I'm accurate in saying that all those records have to be preserved, and that it's a violation of the law. Now, what penalty there is for a president who decides to do that is another question. We also know that President Trump is very cavalier and loose about classification of material. Now, he's the president. He can declassify something almost instantly. Nobody else can, but he can. And he has, on occasion, just blurted out things that have been classified or that don't normally become part of public conversation because he simply doesn't know any better. Now, those could be violations of law, but since he's the president, he gets away with it. I mean, when he was recently in Iraq, for example, he mentioned all the names of one of our SEAL teams. Well, he basically outed them. I mean, those are not things that we go around talking about in public. People who are in the field, operating in missions, why would he name them?
Yeah, I think to your point there is that he just doesn't know any better. And it's this constant battle that I have in my head is he really as stupid as he appears? And if so, how is he pulling this shit off?
Every indication that I have seen from all the people that I have read about Trump, the people who know him, the kind of information you see, the kind of information that came out in Bob Woodward's book, Fear, Trump in the White House, is that he really is that bad. He doesn't remember from one day to the next what he said. He's easily swayed by whoever he talked to last. He doesn't seem to have a grasp of issues large and small. Everything has to be filtered through his particular ego, and that's a very, very kind of tragic situation. We read about those kind of characters in history. Shakespeare writes about them, and we read about some of the wacky emperors of Rome and some of the weird kings and queens of England and other places, and how they were, virtually nuts. Well, we finally elected such a character in the United States of America.
I can almost see the scene from Gladiator where Trump's yelling, "Am I not merciful?" It's just that kind of thing that no matter what he does, as far as he is concerned, he is the best. He knows more than anybody and everybody. Even recently, while I have a soft spot in my heart for the idea of us not being in so many countries and involved with so many conflicts, sometimes there's real practical reasons to be there or practical reasons not to leave. Any thoughts on this spontaneous Syria thing that we're getting out, and then of course now we're not, but we are?
The message that came out of the Syrian conflict is not from me. It's from one of our most distinguished generals who has served this country for virtually his whole life, James Mattis, Secretary of Defense, and who simply could no longer tolerate working for Donald Trump, and felt that perhaps in the end, trying to keep him in line and trying to control him from the inside was not working, and that he needed to make a public statement for the world to see that he could no longer abide by this president and his mercurial decision-making process. And then after Trump announced this unilaterally by Twitter, and he doesn't notify anybody. The worst thing is that the Secretary of Defense and nobody else at the Pentagon knew that the president was arbitrarily. This is a dictator. This is the acts of an autocrat. Someone who says, "I'm the president. I'm going to do this." And we learned that just before he made that decision, he was talking with the president of Turkey, and the Turks saw that, it was to their advantage to suggest to Trump that he get those 2,000 Americans out of there. So we don't know exactly all what went down, and we also don't know how many times Trump changed his mind. But what we do know for sure is that a very distinguished American, James Mattis, had it up to here and couldn't take it anymore. And then when he left, he wrote a fantastic public resignation.
Yes.
That will stand as one of the important documents of the Trump administration.
I agree, and it's one of those things, like you said, that it's whoever he talked to last, but it also seems whoever he talks to last that shares his wacky ideas. Because
it's clear that we know from many examples that when he thinks of his base, the people who are speaking for his base are the people, some of the people, at least, at Fox News. There are people like Ann Coulter, one of the wackiest extreme writers on American politics you can imagine, and Rush Limbaugh. So he listens to what they're saying, and they were opposed to some of his recent actions, and they also said, Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter both said, well, don't be a chicken, you got to stick with this closing the government down. So why would he listen to some of these extreme pundits when he has around him, at his disposal, the greatest arsenal of informed professional people in the world, which he refuses to use? He's made the White House tiny because it's only him.
Yeah.
He cannot rely on experts. He cannot learn from other people. And so that what he's done is he's taken the most powerful office in the world and shrunk it to the size of his particular personal ego, and no other information needs to come into that system because he already has told us on countless times during the campaign and since he's been president that he knows best, that he's the smartest man in any room that he goes into.
Now, I think if I understand this correctly, and I actually just earlier today had a little bit of a discussion, if I could be so bold as to call it that, because it wasn't really productive, on Facebook with someone over the idea that the House of Representatives and the Senate both passed a law to fund the government for a while, including $1.6 billion that Trump asked for the wall. That's the amount he asked for. They gave it to him. And then he, because of Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh, suddenly changed his mind and said now it's $5 billion. And of course, that number is now changed to $5.7 billion. And that's what has caused this whole shutdown thing, is a spontaneous last-minute change after everyone had already agreed on what we were going to do. Does that sound right?
That is right. And bills to keep the government open that were passed just 3 or 4 weeks ago, and suddenly they're rejected. They're not operable anymore. And the Democrats on the House side, both sides are playing this terrible cat and mouse game that I don't think any of us appreciate, and that we're all frustrated by it. But the Democrats are on the House, now that they have control of the House, are passing appropriations bills. Then they won't even get to the Senate because Mitch McConnell is acting. This is one of the really sad things about what's going on right now. And for many years, and of course with all the years I worked at the Robert Byrd Center for Congressional History, it was named after Senator Byrd of West Virginia, who was the longest-serving senator in U.S. history. But Senator Byrd, when he was majority leader, he went from minority leader to majority leader, and he said, the difference between the minority leader and the majority leader is the minority leader represents his party. The majority leader represents his party, the Senate, and the nation. And what we've got in Mitch McConnell right now is a majority leader who's acting like he's in the minority. He's acting strictly as a partisan Republican, doing the bidding of a president. Now, that is bad enough, but when you think about it, Congress is a co-equal branch of government. Congress has every bit as the power of the presidency. We don't really think of it that way in modern times, but they do, and constitutionally they do. So for Mitch to kowtow to President Trump, he's not only acting as a partisan, he's actually undermining the power of the United States Senate to act as a co-equal branch that checks excessive power of a president.
And
that is about the most serious thing I could say about it.
I agree 100%, and I've even done some posts where I say that I think this shutdown now is as much of Mitch McConnell's problem as anybody else. He owns it because the House keeps passing resolutions, like you said. The Senate is not even allowed to vote on them, not even allowed to talk about them, and they're bringing forth other bills of nonsensical things. All they have to do is bring the bill to the Senate, and everybody votes up or down. If it passes, then the government could, the House and the Senate can agree to open the government. It goes to Trump, and he can veto it. And then it comes back, and the House and the Senate can either override the veto or not. But we can't get there because the Senate is stuck because Mitch McConnell is, like you said, he's abdicated his authority. He's abdicated the power of 100 people, actually all of the people in the Senate and the House, because he's stopped everything. So I say it's now on his head that the government can't reopen.
Now, let me give you some numbers, Phil. I know you're a good numbers guy, but these are a little different numbers. It takes 67 senators, that's 2/3, to override a presidential veto. There's 47 Democrats, and so the Republicans do control the Senate, but it would only take 20 Republicans, less than half of the Republicans in the Senate, to side with the Democrats to get a 2/3 vote in the Senate. So we're talking about 20 Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, in the Senate. Look on the House side. The House has 435 members, and it takes 2/3 to override a veto. And we have 238, I think it is, 238 Democrats. So all we would need from the House, which has almost 200 Republicans, all we need is 55 of those Republicans. Let the hotheads not vote for it. But are there not 55 Republicans in the House who can think of the country rather than their party? Are there not 20 Republicans in the Senate who can think of the country rather than their party? So all we need to find is 75 Republicans in the House and Senate, and we can override whatever the president does. The beauty of that would be that it would reestablish Congress, and it would send a broad shot across the president's bow that the Congress can override the actions of a president. This president doesn't know that. He's had 2 years where Congress has been a rubber stamp for him. They've not investigated him worth a darn. Most of their investigations have been sort of cover-ups. So he's had a free ride on the investigations from the House and the Senate, and we've heard lots of scandals about different things that going on during those investigations in the House and Senate, but it was always mostly a cover-up. Nothing ever came out of it, and a lot of people were never even called as witnesses. But now that's different. The House is in Democratic hands. During 2019, they will conduct many investigations, and Trump will slowly realize that the power of the Constitution, the power of the Congress, can actually check him. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Well, I hope so. And it's one of those things that I often think about, everything from changing the Republican platform at the convention in reference to Russia invading and taking over part of the Ukraine, to Trump's recent comments about why Russia went into Afghanistan. Every single thing that he has done, it appears, is for the benefit of Russia, particularly Putin. Am I missing something, or does that look like that to you?
Oh, absolutely. I don't see. I think that's apparent to everyone that has paid any attention. That he simply has not ever criticized Putin or his allies in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we've had this terrible case of the murder of Washington Post journalist Khashoggi.
Yes,
and the fact that our intelligence services pinned that on the Saudi prince, and And then Trump says, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. And then just brushes it aside. So there's no moral leadership there. But worse than that is this. My theory is that Trump really sees Russia as a potential cash cow for him personally, and saw that for many years and has worked for a long time to work deals with Russia. And the fact that he was actually thinking of settling a deal for a major construction project, a Trump Tower, a Trump Hotel near Moscow, while he was running for president, there's so many red flags there. Pardon the pun on the red communists. But there's so many red flags there that it defies all logic and all possible normalcy. The emoluments clause of the Constitution. A top official of the government, any official of the government, cannot take anything of value from a foreign head of state or from a foreign country. You just don't do that. That's in the Constitution because the founders understood that people can be corrupted and that people can be bribed. And that people will, and we've got a president that was hoping to make hundreds of millions of dollars off of a Russian construction project and all the things that are entailed in that. Now, this was not something that happened long ago, although he has had dealings with Russia going back at least till the mid-1980s.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that he took his Miss America pageant to Russia was to try to develop and cultivate Russian connections. And he always plays that down, says, I didn't meet Putin while I was there. He certainly tried.
Yeah.
But he certainly met plenty of other Russians while he was there and plenty of Putin's associates. So it's all been through sort of these intermediate oligarchs. The Russians have been buying up his apartments. They've been coming to his casinos. They came to his inauguration from the Ukraine and from Russia in such great numbers that's now under investigation because there's some money there that we're trying to figure out. This huge amount of money that came in for the inauguration, which was about 3 times larger than any president ever raised. What happened to that money?
Because it's gone.
And where did it come from? And if it came from foreigners, then we're talking about the emoluments clause of the Constitution.
Yeah, it's absolutely staggering. And I know I had the luxury of visiting you before you retired and going to the Byrd archives, I guess, if that's not the right word, correct me. And
yes,
there's a incredible amount of documentation, paperwork, virtually everything he wrote or was written to him, and an incredible number of things that he was given as gifts, which he immediately turned over because he didn't want anything to even seem like it was a conflict that he kept anything that was given to him.
That is true, and that's true of almost everybody that works for the government that's above board. If you're, senators go on these fact-finding trips, and there are a lot of, we talk about them as sort of vacations and things, but no, it's important for senators and House members to get out into the world, to meet world leaders, to go on the ground, to understand things. We expect our people to be informed. We expect them to understand things. And intergovernment relations gets down to personalities, and you have to know people that you're dealing with. So. But when you go there, sometimes they will give you a gift, or the government will give you a gift. You can accept the gift and immediately turn it over to the Senate, and the Senate curator has an office, and anything of value like that is kept, and eventually it can go to a nonprofit organization later. Gifts to a president. I mean, there's just literally thousands of gifts that the President of the United States gets all the time. They take up a huge amount of space in warehouses all around the country. But the president can't keep them. Maybe this president is, but I don't know. But
yeah.
Any president can't do that. But when they open a presidential library at some point, when it's part of the government thing, if they want to put something on display, say a rug from Persia or something like that, they can do that. But that's because no money changes hands and nobody's profiting off of it. Every president knows when they start a campaign that there's going to be people that are going to be wanting to help them, and they want to show their appreciation, and they like to do that with money, and they also like to do it with gifts. If it's a foreign country, every campaign knows this. If it's a foreign country and they approach you, you immediately call the FBI. And Trump and none of his people ever called the FBI. And in fact, they were meeting with Russians right in Trump Tower. And they never called the FBI and said, we've got some Russians here. Oh, they're talking about Russian adoption of Russian babies. Well, that's okay, I guess. No, it's not even okay to do that. If it's a Russian agent that's talking to a presidential candidate or some of the president's people, that is something that needs to be instantly reported to the FBI. And everybody in every campaign that's ever been run in this country knows that.
Well, I mean, of course,
Trump.
You have cases like Flynn was an unregistered agent for Turkey and maybe other countries. We have Manafort, who has gone around the world and helped politicians win elections, I'll say it politely, and had endless contacts, particularly in the Ukraine and with Russia. It's just this incredible laundry list that everyone around him is associated somehow with Russia. So many people around him have either pled guilty or have been convicted of crimes and cover-up. And they had endless numbers of meetings, which all got denied until they were known. And then they say it's for this reason. Then we find out it's not. It just never seems to be, there's an end to it. And I look at the Republican Party and wonder, why are they okay with this? Is someone like Mitch McConnell involved? Is he making money too? Or is he just sucking up to Trump?
This is a complete mystery to me. I've been around government long enough, and when I worked for Congress, of course, my office was a nonpartisan office. We worked for the entire institution, and my partisanship is coming out now that I'm an old retired guy. And I don't think it's so much partisanship as that it's speaking up for the rule of law and speaking up for what the Constitution actually says. And I feel like I have to do that because so many people are pretending that it doesn't exist. And but my point is that when I was there and I saw Republicans and Democrats, and I saw a lot of good people on both sides of the aisle, I saw people who were dedicated to public service. They'd come up through the ranks. They'd been mayors of small towns. They were doing their job as best they could. I didn't have to agree with them. I wasn't there to make policy. I wasn't there to vote on legislation. I was there to study the history of the institution, and also my job was to prepare all the biographies of every member that has ever served, all the way back to 1789. So I got to know the members, and of course they would come into my office with their forms when we were doing a new edition of the Biographical Directory of Congress, and I saw them as three-dimensional human beings. I didn't see them as cardboard cutouts that said D for Democrat or R for Republican. And I saw them in three dimensions, and I still do. I still pay attention to that, and I know that these are most of them decent human beings. Why is still a mystery to me that enough members of the president's party cannot realize that we got snookered by a total con man, by a totally inept person. A lot of us knew that. I think a lot of the press knew that, but the press failed because they didn't think that he was going to make it.
Yeah,
Hillary Clinton certainly didn't think that he was going to make it. She thought she was going to be a shoo-in because how could the country elect such a buffoon?
Yeah, and I don't even think Trump thought he could make it. So
say that again?
I don't think Trump thought he could get elected.
Well, there's lots of evidence that he was running because it was a huge ego trip for him, and that he was going to use that to increase his influence in not only in the United States but in the world, and that he would then be able to go off and make all these deals with foreign powers and with Russians and make money.
Yeah.
I think he really wants to be a Russian oligarch. He likes the idea of unfettered power, unfettered money, no regulation of his actions by law. He spent most of his entire life with more than 3,500 lawsuits, fighting the law, pushing the envelope, and just before he's elected president, he settles a $25 million lawsuit for his fraudulent Trump University. So that history was there, and we elected him anyhow. But I don't think we fully grasped. People tend to look at other things, and let me say this, Phil. I would never suggest that 63 million people that voted for Donald Trump are all stupid idiots. I reject that argument. I hear it from a lot of people that don't like Trump, and they want to jump on people for voting for him. You had two candidates, neither one of them necessarily ideal. You had an awful lot of Americans who were living in towns that had been hollowed out, turned into ghost towns. Businesses went overseas. All the stuff that you know and your listeners know, the globalization of the world, the things are changing so fast, a lot of people are getting left out. And so there was legitimate frustration and legitimate concern for a lot of issues that resonated deeply with the American people. It just happened to play out in a very, very unfortunate way.
Indeed. So as we get near the end of our time, I'll be so bold to ask you, do you want to make a prediction of what's going to happen next?
I can't predict, but I do believe that the Mueller investigation should be out. We keep hearing at the end of February or March. The House hearings will gear up. We're going to learn a lot more. We're going to see a lot more people subpoenaed and put under oath than the Republicans allowed. So I think 2019 is going to be the year that Trump is either resigns or is impeached. But I can't say that's going to happen in the next 90 days. It's going to happen sometime this year. And there's lots of reason to have it happen this year before we get too close to the 2020 campaign. And so my prediction is that this cannot stand, that it is so egregious that it cannot stand, and eventually enough Americans will come to their senses. In the meantime, all of us don't have to come to our senses. What has to come to its senses, and it's already working that way, is the American court system, the investigations being done by Mueller, the investigations that are going on in the Southern District of New York. The rule of law will prevail. That's my prediction.
Excellent. Well, I know I am scared of Pence and the possible theocracy he might bring, but hopefully if he stays, maybe they both go out, that he'll be wounded enough to not really get anything past the Congress. And my silver lining in all of this is so many people get upset that the next election cycle, the Democrats control everything, and we get universal health care. That's my dream.
That would be a nice outcome.
It would be. Well, tell us about the book one more time and when it comes out and where people can buy it.
It'll be available on Amazon, and it will be called American Demagogue, Critical Essays on the Trump Presidency, and probably by February 15th it'll be published, and it's in design right now. And once it gets through design, all you have to do is hit the publish button with Amazon, and 2 days later you got books and ebooks.
Fantastic, Ray. Well, I look forward to getting my own copy. And once again, thank you for coming and visiting me on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Glad to do it, Phil. Best of luck to you.
We do not accept that there is now or has ever been a holy person, and that includes everyone from Mother Teresa to Moses to Jesus Christ. We call him J.C. Mohammed, his daughter Fatima, the angel Moroni, the Pope, any pope, all of the popes, any oracles, self-appointed or appointed by other persons, or elected by strange men in long red dresses. We do not accept that there is any efficacy in prayer. And we don't care whether they're said by your legislator, George Bush, yourself, myself, a priest, a rabbi, a minister, a guru, or even your mama. Atheists see all of this, first, as being totally subjective and going on only in your little heads, nowhere else. And secondly, we see it basically as simply being silly. We don't hate you. We think you're quite odd. But these are all very ancient, outmoded fables, and we no longer need to cling to them in our modern world. The most difficult thing in the world to do is to live in it. Just to get along with other people, to earn a living, to meet our basic needs. And we do not need encumbered by all of these ideas which bring you a sense of guilt, a sense of inadequacy, of impotence. We need a decent, modern, sophisticated, workable set of standards by which we can get along with ourselves and others.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Well, hopefully by the time you're listening to the show, the government shutdown is over. But I have a feeling that it won't be. So fingers crossed, because there's a lot of people who are hurting because they're not getting paid. Some of them are working and not getting paid, which is the ultimate worst. And then, of course, businesses that are in areas where government employees would come to shop, to buy lunch or dinner or clothes or tools, they're all going to start hurting. So this is serious business, and it needs to get fixed. And I am now at the point where I blame Mitch McConnell. We all know Trump is insane, and he's going to do whatever Ann Coulter tells him to. So there's no negotiating there. The ultimate negotiator can't negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. It's a demand. It's a petulant child making a demand. And I'm kind of on the position that you can't really concede to his demand, because then he'll just do it again. The House has passed resolutions, and the Senate should vote on them, and Mitch McConnell is not allowing that. So I now blame Mitch McConnell. Do have a review on iTunes from Gunder. And I'll thank you for the 5-star review despite the comments. And I'm going to tell you what he said. So here we go into Gunder's review. Kind of an unusual blend of personal and informational. I think I know more about Phil's hobbies and struggles with learning Italian than any of my real friends. It could be just annoying, but somehow ends up kind of charming. Great information, and he's careful not to overpromise on his financial advice. His interviews are different and always know it's going to go off the rails if someone mentions anything about Italy or learning languages. Yeah, that's probably true. He continues, but it works. It drives me crazy that he somehow can't pronounce especially. It took me a minute. I had to read that over and over again because I didn't know that I mispronounced especially. According to them, I say especially. So maybe I do. I'll listen for that, because I know it's one of those things. I'll watch TV shows and then suddenly someone will say something that strikes me as odd. I was listening to someone from the Boston area, and they were talking normally, and then all of a sudden they said the name of the third month of the year. We have January, February, and then March. And that really kind of struck my ear. So I can appreciate if I don't say something the way that you expect it. So especially, I'm going to work on that. It took me a while to get fiduciary correct, and who knows, maybe I don't even say it correct now. Please, Phil, please learn how to correct it or find another word in the thesaurus. So thank you. I have the smartest listeners ever, so they can help me learn and get better as I go along. So thank you for that 5-star review. There are no new reviews over at Stitcher, so I'm just going to wrap up because I'm sure the show is too long already. Thank you to all the people who have become patrons. And of course, if you want to help the fundraiser for American Atheist student grants for the conference in 2019, go to patreon.com/Phil. You can support the show and help take money out of my wallet because I'm going to match up to $5,000. And as I said way back in the beginning, we have another anonymous listener who is also going to play in the game, and your donations, contributions can be multiplied by a factor of 4. Anyway, that's all I've got today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing with your friends. And thank you for the 5-star reviews. I almost forgot. In February 3rd, yes, February 3rd, I think it's that Sunday, I will be in Austin, Texas, to be on the Atheist Experience. Been on there twice before. It's kind of a regular thing now for me to go once a year, sometimes in the spring. And this year it's going to be very early, I guess still winter, February 3rd. Hopefully I can get on a flight because TSA agents are not showing up to work because they're also not getting paid. Fingers crossed I make it to Austin and I get to be on the Atheist Experience. And while I'm there, maybe a couple of their other podcasts. Hopefully you can catch me there or see me in person at an upcoming conference. Until then, ciao.